Good morning, guys. Allie with Mystic Cycle Center. I wanted to come on this morning and talk with you guys about bonking. So, probably many of you athletes have experienced this at some point. If you're new to cycling, bonking just means when you pretty much hit your absolute threshold. So basically, you've been pushing yourself, and you've just reached your absolute limit. So like for me, I'll tell you a little story. The Tour de Zwift was happening last month, and I was doing, it was probably like stage 4 or 5. Basically, we were in France, and there was a lot of climbing. So it was Mount Venu we were climbing, and we had gotten to a point where the race was ending, but you could keep going to reach the top. So I figured, well, I'm already here, I might as well keep going. So I did. And I think that's the most that I have ever climbed on my bike yet to date. And I reached the top, and as I reached the top, I was getting ready to descend, which is like, you know, when you've reached the top, that is what you're looking forward to most. You finally just get to like let the bike take you down the hill, gain speed, and you don't have to work the way that you were anymore. So I'm at the top, all of a sudden, nauseous, like just totally felt nauseous and sick to my stomach. And I had been fine up until that point. I was making sure I was fueling myself. I was drinking a ton of water. But it was just game over. I was off my bike and I had to go lay down. I needed to sit somewhere cool. And just for the rest of the night, honestly, I had pushed myself beyond my limit, and I just didn't feel well. I needed to go to bed. Probably many of you have been there at some point. You know, ultimately your goal is to start out with something and then build your way up, right? So you build on your skill, you build on your ability. I've had people, make comments like, well, I'm a great runner, or I'm really good with endurance. And, that's awesome. And we all have ways that we excel. So for me, like in high school, I was a great soccer player. But the way that you use those skills are going to be different across different platforms. So for cycling, you're using different muscles. You're using different parts of your body, and you have to build that up. Whereas for running, you're using different things. And it's just overall, it's different. Just because you're good at basketball doesn't mean that you're good at, let's say, soccer or softball or whatever it might be. And that's not to say that you can't get good at it and you can't build those skills up, because you certainly can. It takes dedication, it takes time, it takes patience, especially. So if you start with something like, let's say you just got your new Peloton, right? And or for our instance, if you support the bike shop, you may have gotten a new tax trainer, and you're riding inside, and it's your first time maybe taking on spinning and doing indoor workouts on your bike. And that's okay. But it might take a little time to get used to that. It might take a little time, with platforms like Zwift, which we use with our smart trainers. They measure your cadence, they measure your power. These might be metrics that you weren't used to having measured before. Until I rode on our smart trainer and rode on Zwift, I wasn't measuring those metrics. So I didn't know what power I was putting out. I didn't know what cadence I was spinning at. And these are all things that can help you kind of gauge, this is where I'm at and this is where I want to be. And a lot of those workouts are going to be structured that way. So you might see group rides that have, an average of 2 watts a kilogram. So that is your power outage per your weight. And that's stuff that you're going to build up to, especially if you weren't used to riding in a way that was measuring those things and keeping a pulse on those things for you. Ultimately, though, what I want to say to you is this. Everybody bonks at some point. It's not something to be ashamed of. I've been on group rides before where I couldn't hang on anymore, and unfortunately it ended up in me overexpending myself to the point of no return. It's not a fun feeling, but the only way to overcome that is to continue pushing yourself in your workouts so that you can build up that endurance and then take on those rides that maybe at one point spent you completely. So just keep that in mind as you go. We're getting, we've gotten through the majority of the winter now. We're getting closer to springtime and outside riding. So as you get into those outdoor rides, just think about the fact that you've probably had these indoor rides. What metrics were you measuring? And is there a way that you can continue measuring those things for yourself through your workouts into your outdoor rides? That way you can still gauge your progress. Just food for thought. As always, don't get down on yourself when you have these moments. It just means that you really worked your tail off for whatever it was that you were trying to achieve. And for that, you should be super proud. You should be really proud of that. Keep at it, guys. I'll be back to you soon with more little tidbits, and have a great weekend.